Hi, everyone. My name is Adele Shortino, and right now I'm waiting for Christine Shively. It seems like she's having a bit of issues coming into the broadcast. I'm not sure if she'll be able to make it in. I've been waiting for her for a few minutes, but welcome and thank you for being here. If you can hear me, could you please just let me know that you're here? And we'll give her a few minutes and see if she can come on in. A couple of things is we will be offering more talk shows throughout the year, not necessarily every weekend, but we are lining out some fabulous artists that can come in and do the talk show and share a little bit about themselves. We're also checking into possibly having some suppliers to talk about their products and just trying to give you a variety to help you on your artistic journey. I'm also going to be scheduling out some artists for 2020. Hey, Leslie, how are you? Thanks for stopping by. Just waiting on Christine. She seems to be having some problems coming into the broadcast. So we're just giving her a few more minutes to see if she can pop in. If not, I'd like to possibly reschedule this because the presentation is about Christine and I want her to be able to talk to everyone about her work, but we'll give her a few more minutes. The other thing I would like to mention is that Christina is also in the fall issue of A4 Artistic. We have a beautiful article on her, and she also has some of her pictures or her images of her latest works. And we're excited to have that issue, which will be coming out the first week of October. And we will be posting information on that. I went ahead. Okay, Christina's coming in. Let me just check with her for a second. Just give me a minute and see what's going on. She's having issues coming in. Oh, there she is. Okay. I see you. I see you. I'll bring you up on the screen. Thanks. Yeah, you're here. So I'm going to go ahead and bring Christina up. She's anxious to get up on the screen. So here she is. Hey.
Hi, everybody. Yeah. I want to thank you, Adele, for inviting me to do this. You've always been such a great advocate for doll artists, and you've just been tireless about this. And I really thank you for inviting me to do this.
Oh, you're welcome. It's my pleasure. I was just telling the group here that I was waiting for you. I didn't know if you were having technical difficulties.
I came in and I said, the host is going to invite you in. I was like, okay, what's gonna happen? So how many others took my email? Maybe there was another little note there or something. And there was. So.
It's okay. All is good. I know everybody's here. Yeah, no problem. We have Leslie O'Leary just popped in and said hi, and Beth Ann. So they're starting to come in. And
nice. Good.
So
good.
Christine, tell us a little bit about. I just mentioned to. Well, I think I did, or maybe not, but I was wanted to mention that you are now a NIADA artist, and wanted to hear a little bit about how was that? How did all that come about? And I know we're just all excited for you.
Well, thank you, Adele. It's been a long process. For me, there's always been kind of this enthusiasm to make your work the best it can be. And in my case, it's a long time coming because there's just always been some little obstacle, whether it was the illness of one husband or a second other husband or a move, and it stalks that momentum. And when I finally got the decks really cleared, I paid attention to part of a wonderful book called Art and Fear. Art and Fear is written by Ted Orland and David Bayless, and they talk about do something that scares you. And I thought, okay, I've got the decks cleared to do some of this. And so I paid attention to what sort of the schedule was going to be for me to be able to set some of this up, because it's a long range goal particularly for someone like me. It's something you have to think of, okay, you're going to come in for this, but how are you going to craft the plan to follow up on it? Because it's the follow-up that can be the thing that catches, the wind in your sails and moves you along. So I had some heads up on where conferences were going to be held. That was really helpful to me. Several of them were within driving distance. So part of it was crafting a game plan.
Right. Yeah, I know. Yeah. And I think a lot of it too is mentally. You have to be mentally ready for it. You may want to in your heart, but mentally you have to be ready. And I find that to be true with a lot of things when you're really pursuing something on a professional level.
Oh, for sure, for sure. When I was dealing with the COPD issues on my husband Lou, I mean, that was a gradual thing that was a decline. You're focused on that. You're not focused on how are you going to do this. And then when I met Charles, the focus is, now you're rebuilding your life because everything's exploded, so you're now rebuilding. And then there's a move, and then there's the adjustment, and then there's a cancer diagnosis. That's the focus. You have to, when the stars are aligned and everything is cleared, you got to pay attention to that. Yes. And finally, it was like, okay, this is my opening in the gate, and I'm gonna go through it. But I had to craft a game plan. And I like what you said, Adele, about being ready in your head too. I crafted everything in my head to where it's like, this has to be a win-win for me in order for this to work. And in that I mean, my goal is the work to get better. So what's the worst that's going to happen if I bring in a doll for critique? I get great advice and the work gets better. That's a win-win. Right. So everything in my whole crafting of this was how is this going to be a win-win? And part of it was getting the game plan together of how everything was going to start to line up. And then some of it is like, who are you in this process? How do you bring out who you are, not who NIADA thinks you need to be, or somebody else thinks you need to be. Like, who are you in this? And that's part of where, the first critique, it's important to follow up on that. And it's important to have that time frame. People kind of go, oh gosh, this takes a while. Well, it's helpful. I would say embrace that. Embrace the fact that you have the time to focus on that thing. That aspect. Let's embrace that and not whine about that. Let's go, okay, that's just a part of that. I didn't go to graduate school. I graduated with a major in art, and I taught art on the secondary level, but I didn't go to graduate school. And I began to thinking, okay, I got to approach this like I'm going to graduate school. And that's really what it was. I was investing my money, my education money in this, rather than going to the University of Kansas or someplace, for a graduate degree. And that was also get your mindset of when that critique happens.
Yeah, it's approximately, I think once you start, it's about a 2-year span there that,
It was harder for me.
Yeah, well, yes. I'm just saying from the time you make application and then you do for a first critique and then if you move further, then it's 2 years.
Right. Oh, yes.
But I mean, it can be longer.
Leading up to the 2 years.
Right.
It was, for sure. I mean, the thing about that first critique, and I would really certainly encourage anybody, if you're going to be able to go to a NIADA conference, take it all for critique, because there is that input of somebody else's eyes looking at this, that input of, ooh, maybe you didn't notice that, that little aspect. And then because you have that time to then address that and then follow up on it, it really holds you accountable for, I really do need to smooth down that neck a little bit, or how am I going to do it? And so it's like, okay, it's been pointed out to me. Okay, what are you going to do about it? Right. And then you have to do something about it.
Yes.
And taking that time frame of really refining that, gosh, it's just like super important. And I don't, embrace it. Is right. What
I see the artists in NIADA are so helpful. And I was in Kansas City and was there for when you received your certificate, and everybody is so helpful in giving.
For
and
sure.
I noticed that even in the critiques, they were really fabulous and very gentle, and they don't want to discourage anybody. They try to help you along to move forward in your quest, so which is wonderful.
Well, I think that the more we all recognize that we need to make this successful for people.
Right.
That as adult artists, everything that we do within this art form, it benefits everybody if people are successful.
Exactly.
And undermining anybody's success is just really not on anybody's agenda, because when it's good for a person to then succeed, everybody does well. And everybody roots for you. Everybody kind of says, this is, be sure you look at this or this, and it all along the way for me, between getting heads up on how to craft it, the agenda of how I'm going to do it, to the critiques, it was all that step by step, where that everything was finally, the decks were cleared. It was like, okay, the doors are opening here. The doors are start figuring out a way to go through that door.
Yes.
And little by little, and I went into this all feeling like I'm not going to feel discouraged if there's a point that I have to work on. I was in Lawrence last year, and my people who know me know my nephew I'm very close to my nephew, and he had a school project. They were working on the DNA helix thing, that's that twisting DNA thing.
Yes.
And I was just getting ready to come in. My sister TK goes, "Oh, thank God Chris is here. She's going to help with Alex." So Alex like, "Oh, help me." So we sit down and and I thought, I'm not going to do this project for him. We're going to do this together. And so we start crafting this thing, and some things were kind of working, and he has a little anxiety here and there. And so at one point he's like, oh, I can't look. Is this going to work? Is this going to work? And I said, Alex, I'm used to things not working out. I'm used to it.
Yeah.
And that's it. And we start talking about, scientific method is not unlike the art method, where it's like, okay, what went wrong? Okay, that was too long. Let's shorten that. Let's try that. You take a deep breath and you go, oh, okay, that's working better. Or, oop, that didn't work. But you can't get frustrated with it. You got to go, okay, let's try this. There's a couple of examples I'm going to show you where it's like, okay, that didn't work.
Well, it's like, the project becomes a challenge, and then it's challenges within the challenge, and that's how it all runs.
Right,
but your work is really, it was amazing. I saw it firsthand when you had it out.
Thank you. Thank you.
It's a lot different. I know when we were back doing a couple of shows in Odaka, I could see the evolution. It really took a big jump into this style that you have now.
Well, I wanted, the other thing that was the win-win for me was, I'm going to have fun with it.
Sure.
I'm going to create things I'm going to love. And this is who I am. And part of having the time to do that is to say, okay, now who am I in this? And what inspires me? Well, language inspires me. Right. I listened to a program, it was on just before we came on NPR, called Away with Words. And it talks about language, and it talks about how we use language. And so sometimes just a word or a phrase will go, and that's the jump off point, and that's the communication point. And it's like, okay, this is who I am in this. It's language. Right. It's how do you then get this to be the visual part of what that language is.
Well, I know that your pieces now are, I love them, Christine, because they are it's a storytelling. Every piece is like a little story. And I know they're all anxious to see them. So I'm going to go ahead and share the screen so we can start our presentation.
Okay. All right.
And so I will jump in here and get this screen shared for us.
Okay.
And I'll give you the full screen, and they can hear you in the background, Christine.
Okay. All right.
So here she is, a NIADA artist. How exciting! How exciting for you!
Oh yeah, it was just a big thrill. I think I said something like, I'm having a really good dream right now. So if you guys tiptoe around a little bit and don't wake me up, that'd be really nice. You know? I'd like to be in this dream for a little bit longer.
Well, we're here to share your dream. So here's one of your pieces.
Thank you. Well, this is Marie Antoinette, and I just very recently, last February, was asked to do a Marie Antoinette for a lovely gal up in Reno. Her name is Sayuri, and she creates kind of porcelain period piece dolls. She's a member of UFDC, but she loves Marie Antoinette. And so this piece, I loved the pale pink. You can't see the shoes in the picture I took. I ended up getting this doll to her fairly quickly, and so I wasn't able to get my wonderful photographer, Susan Mantle, to do my professional pictures this time. But one of the things about the NIADA experiences is it really makes it very, very apparent that you need to make everything that's on the piece. Anything the things that are manufactured that end up on something it's such a glaring jolt to your vision that that you have this beautiful handcrafted thing and then this manufactured thing. So I sewed the ruching from ribbon on that V shape. I ruched that, and then I made all of the silk ribbon roses. That whole period was all about, I mean, it's all about embellishment. It's all about, you know, all of the lovely little items that are on the dress. That pale pink silk was just, I mean, it was just really, really luscious. I got super lucky, and the center of the skirt where these flowers are, that's a very old vintage type of an embellishment. I don't think you can tell from a photo, but it's a chenille yarn. It's a very old piece that has little bits of like gold that outline this. I've never seen anything like it. And I got very lucky that one of my little groups in Kansas City who brings me in to do little trunk shows, lovely lady named Carol Hale. And she was basically tearing down her studio. And she said, would you like some of these things? And there were boxes. There were boxes of things in her house. I didn't have enough room in my suitcases when I flew home. I had to have my sister, when she came to visit, bring it to me because there was so much. But those pieces, they were like an applique type of pieces, were in this stash of things that my friend Carol Hale gave me. And so that's used in the top part of the hair, the headdress type of thing, because that whole thing with that high hair was all about, you know, putting embellishments in that. One of the challenges for Marie Antoinette was the big hair. I mean, the thing in Texas where they say that the higher the hair, the closer to God. I mean, that's certainly what Marie Antoinette era is all about. So I'm sure many of our people who might be watching might remember Coneheads on Saturday Night Live. So in order to get this hair and this whole thing to set up high, I created I sewed a cone head. She looked like a cone head out of the white felt. And that's where I really fell in love with the very fine mohair yarn. I wanted it to look like a line drawing. The doll, I love drawing and painting. There's a drawing and painting element to the face. And by having that very fine yarn, it looks like the line drawing. And so by stuffing and having this cone head, I could lay that yarn across that top of the head and then create the little curls and things, and it's going to stay. Nothing's going to fall. It's a thing that's on her head that's going to be permanent. So I think you can see in the close up a little bit better the little ribbon roses that I made out of the silk. I love the that kind of metallic crinkled kinds of fabric that's at the cuffs for right around her elbow area. You know, the back part, there's lots of pickups and you know, that whole sense of opulence with the fabric, where you're just going to gather it and have all kinds of beautiful folds and things in that. But that was a beautiful piece to do. I really did enjoy it, and Sayur really loved it. So
yeah, she's fabulous. You just finished her, right? You just finished her.
Yes, I delivered her just a week ago.
Oh,
and so
fabulous.
Yeah, she's lovely. And this is another request from a lovely gal named Kathleen. And I had seen her at different events over the years. And she loves my dolls, and she makes these fun suggestions. She wanted, prior to this request, she loves Alice in Wonderland, and she wanted an Alice with the long neck from the Tennille illustrations really show that, but she wanted that long necked Alice, and I never thought to make something like that. And she requested it. I was like, oh, this is fun. It did turn. She loved it. I mean, but it was that little suggestion that was like, oh, let's give this a try and see if it'll help. So this doll is called Sailing the High Seas, and I did the same cone head thing on her head, because this sailboat sitting high on her head, this is that language thing again. The sailboat is sailing on the high seas because it's high on her head, and I had to have something that's going to kind of really support this sailboat that I was going to create. I used sort of that corrugated it's a type of paper you get at paper stores, and that makes the boat. And then I fell in love with this kind of wool blended felt about 5-6 years ago. When I go and visit my family in Lawrence, Kansas, there's just an amazing fabric store called Sarah's Fabrics. And I started kind of collecting this whole palette of these wool felts, and little by little, it just really began to incorporate into the doll. And the thing that I also really began to incorporate is the cut work that's in the skirt. So there's, and I'll show you some examples when we finish with the other things, but it's a knit that I cut out my little pattern. You put it on freezer paper. I will iron it to the knit, and then you cut out. You can see the little, almost like a leaf shape underneath the fish. And there's fabric that's popping through that. Well, it's inspired by the Alabama Channon stitch books, where there is this, what they call reverse applique. I love hand stitching. I love the fact that there's visible stitches. It's obvious that the artist's hand was put onto this. And I fell in love with it. And then I began to kind of think, oh, how am I going to kind of make a little twist on that? How am I going to, what else can I do? A lot of my process is like the tenets of improv. And improv says yes and, agree and add, and heighten and explore. So the first part of it for the Alabama channel was yes, and what else? And that's where a lot of this, so you would agree, but then you would add, and then that's where all the little things underneath peeking out and becoming three-dimensional, that's the agree and add, and then you heighten and you explore it. And that's where a lot of this cut work came from, was that first basic kind of suggestion of a process through the Alabama Chan and Stitch books, and then adding to it. There's a ship's wheel on the side. There's an anchor in the front of the dress, and then there's Kathleen asked about Trafalgar Square, and so on the other side there's a big column, and it's Nelson's column. So then there's little fish kind of popping off, kind of like they're on hopping along the side of the little boat. And of course, there's always rope involved in sailboats. So and there's little anchors and little doodads and things. So so that's why she's holding up there's string up in the rope up in the sailboat. So all those little
she's
things.
amazing. Yeah.
She's lovely. Yeah.
Christine, how long does it take you to make one of these pieces?
I'd say probably takes 2 weeks.
2 weeks, okay.
By the time you do the body, and you get that just the way you want that, because I blow out fingers all the time. I mean, I'm upfront about the fact that I don't get them right every single time. So sometimes there's you going back. Sometimes something doesn't work, and you have to work it out, because it is a lot of improv. And and then you have all the detail of the cut work on the skirt and all of that creation. I'm going to say probably about 2 weeks is what I would have to say it takes to do some of these things.
Yeah, she's lovely. Let's go to the next one.
Okay.
Cattails.
Here's Cattails. So here's another one that language is involved, because I thought, ooh, cattails. Ooh, there's the cat with the tail of the cat, and then there's the botanical, the thing that comes out of swamps and marshy areas, cattails. But then there's also you can read about a cat, and that's a tale about a cat. So I had several elements of just one phrase that started the whole thought process. So we have a kitty that's playing with the little item that she's dangling a little doodad from her hand, and that kitty's playing with that. And then we have the brown cattails that are sticking out so that's the reference to that. And then we have a kitty that's lying on her back, a little gray and white kitty. And I made a little pop-up book, because I love pop-up books. I have a lot of the Robert Sabuda pop-up books. And of course, that kitty is reading a tale about a kitty. And of course, the tale he's reading is Puss in Boots. So the little book opens up, and the shoes pop up. So it's a little pop-up book. There's a kitty on the back of the dress that is the kitten with the mittens. And so that little kitten has put her mittens in the cattails. And of course, she's not going to remember where she put those mittens, because she's too busy playing with the ball of yarn that she has that she's playing with. So that's where sort of the thought process of how one thing leads to another, to another, to another. Now, the cat on her head was the second effort at that. And later, when I'm going to show you the hat that I originally made for the doll. And the hat took me a day and a half. And I put it on her head, and it was like, that doesn't work. It's overpowering this doll. I got to simplify. And so I have the hat. It's going to go somewhere else, or it's going to have some other little purpose. But I do have that hat that I'll show you when we flip to the show and tell end of it. And I think by looking at the piece here and looking at the little hat that I originally made, I suspect everybody's going to go, yeah, good call. Sometimes you just have to go, it didn't work.
Yeah.
And this is where I always tell Alex, don't get frustrated. Just go, okay, why didn't that work? How do we work to change it? And oh my God, the second one worked. So, I mean, and revel in that and embrace that. So this was definitely one. And this was also one where I had an original costuming idea that didn't quite cut it. And I have the example of what didn't work. And then I'm going to show you later on why that didn't work. So, and how I'm going to use it somewhere else. I'll add, you know, the little hat. I mean, it's cute as it can be, but it just absolutely overpowered the doll. So it's like, okay, whoops, let's go again. So, but I'll show you how I'm going to rearrange these things later on. But that's, you know, I tell people all the time, no, don't worry about it if it doesn't work. Try something else. So.
Absolutely, move on. Yep. And just, you know, those are all challenges, right?
Yeah, for sure. So then you have, oh, okay. My younger sister, TK, she's Alex's mom. She won a costume contest where she was the queen bee. And we tease her. And this was like 8-9 years ago this happened. And we tease her about being the queen bee. And she started collecting stuff with bees. And every time we turn around, we're fighting, oh, this would be perfect for TK because it's bee related. But I do think that a bee in her bonnet, to be or not to be. I mean, I have a whole list. I have old technology. So my little iPod is where I have lots of notes. And so I have a whole list of things that you could do for bee-related things. So because I love these tall cone-like hats, I thought, oh, a bee in her bonnet. Yeah, you put the bee up in the top in the bonnet, and then you could put all kinds of, there's a honeycomb just below that, and of course the beehive up in there. It's just a little bit of a hug to my sister TK, to kind of give her a little props for, ooh, yeah, bees. Yeah, bees have great potential in terms of just the language of don't worry, be happy. It's just to be or not to be. There's a ton of things you could do where just that one little phrase, a little phrase just starts the ball rolling, and off you are into this world of, oh, look, I can do this and I can do that, and then I can add to that, and that's one of the things that I get great pleasure out of.
Yeah, she's lovely, Christina. She's lovely.
Yeah, she's a good piece. And this piece here, the title of this is Between the Idea and the Reality. And one of my favorite poems is the T.S. Eliot poem, The Hollow Man. And you should do a little Google search on The Hollow Man. It's a very famous poem because the last line of the poem. But the best part of the poem precedes that. And it really talks about that. How do you get that right idea, the thing that's in your head? How is that going to come out to where you want it to come out? And as an artist, and just not just as an artist, but as a person, you just try to make that like, gee, that came out so much better in my head than when I said it. We're always trying to close that gap of how is that going to go from my head to where to the fruition of how it's going to come out. So the middle of the this little tabard thing in the middle with all these little cut work circles, that's the two-dimensional. That would be like the line drawing. How do you get that line drawing into the three-dimensional, which is the ball that she's holding in her hand? So the poem, the last part of the poem is between the idea and the reality, between the motion and the act, falls the shadow. Between the which is the ball between the that she's holding in her hand. So I'm sorry.
You're good.
Okay, so between the idea and the reality, between the motion and the act, falls the shadow. Between the conception and the creation, between the emotion and the response, falls the shadow. Life is very long. Between the desire and the spasm, between the motion and between the desire and the spasm, between the emotion and the response, falls the shadow. Oh. Between the potency and the existence, between the essence and the descent, falls the shadow. For thine is the kingdom, for thine is life is, for thine is this is the way the world ends. This is the way the world ends. So this is the way the world ends, not with a bang, but a whimper. So everybody remembers the last part of that poem. This is the way the world ends, not with a bang, but a whimper. But the best part is between the idea and the reality. Yeah. How do you get that part? Because I think it really speaks to the creative process of, we're always on that quest of, man, that looked so different in my head than how it
That's so true, isn't it? Even when we put it on paper.
And then it's like, oh, that worked just exactly like I thought. That's what we're always aiming for. And yes. that's really what the concept of that doll is. It's everybody can relate to. Yeah, I thought I was going to say that better, but it just didn't turn out that way.
Well, she's lovely. She's lovely.
Yeah, thank you. Okay, this is another one that's a little piece of language, birds of a feather, kind of gets the ball rolling in some ways. But the other thing that got the ball rolling on this doll is the very top bird on the top of her hat. There's a little red heart that this bird is holding in its beak. And I love nature programs. I love Planet Earth on BBC America. Has a program called Planet Earth. And the second segment of Planet Earth 2 had a segment on cities, and it showed these bowerbirds in Australia, and they build these intricate, incredible nests. And I love birds' nests as well as feathers and things, but I love birds' nests, and I have a whole collection of wonderful birds' nests. But as I'm watching this bird build this nest out of trash, basically, little bits of plastic, little bits of, and he's rearranging this, and I'm sitting there watching this, and I'm going, oh, I'm a bowerbird. Oh my God. I collect all kinds of little stuff. I incorporate it, see different things into it, and then I add it to the thing, and I'm like, oh my God, I'm a bowerbird. Oh my God, that's me. And here's this, so here's this bird, and he has this red heart that he's moving around his nest, just moving it around, making sure it's in the right spot. And then he's getting everything all situated. Then he flies away. And apparently this red heart is the most coveted thing among these birds, because another bird comes in and he steals the heart. He takes it away. He puts it in his nest. And he's doing his little ritual of getting his little nest with all his little bits of junk that he's got set in this little opportunistic bird's nest. He moves it around. Another bird comes in. That's the only thing they look at. That's the only thing they get is the heart. And so another bird takes the heart away. And I thought, oh my God, I love it. I love it. I love it. I love it. So that's really where some of this started coming from as I'm formulating the skirt. Every one of the birds that's in the skirt has something different in its beak. It has a bead, or it has little bits of thread, or it has a little bit of I think I used something from little bits of straw. But there's 2 more birds on the back of the skirt. There's 5 birds altogether on that go in and out of the skirt. And every one of them has something different in it. So the doll is holding a chain, and I make all of the little thing that's the close-up of the doll. You can see the little fabric bead thing that I made that she's dangling from. So I used the coordinating fabrics that worked in the doll. And so she's holding this whole thing. And of course her thought is, what can I do with this? And that's kind of where I will be in a shop and I will buy something and people go, what are you going to do with that? And I go, I have no idea. Maybe something later on, but I can see the potential in it. But this is what she's doing. It's like, oh, what can I do with this? And so, the thing that in the book Art and Fear, one of the statements that David Bayless and Ted Orland make is that all art is autobiographical. There's something about it that's who you are that comes out in the work. And so that my thought process and how I put stuff together, that's how it comes out through the dolls.
Well, they're just wonderful, and
she's one of my favorites, I gotta say.
Yeah, I love black and white and red, so she's very nice. I like her too.
Yeah.
And I can see you like black and red as well.
I do. I do. This is another one of those all art is autobiographical things. So Dragonfly is that little autobiographical thing where I'm born in the year of the dragon. So I thought, okay, I got to do something, and also it's that play on words. So there's a dragon that is going in and out of. I call this kind of cut work that I do before I cut into the knit. I mean, I call this the Swiss cheese because, I mean, come on, it looks like Swiss cheese. So there are things that move in and out of those little holes. And so the dragon is moving in and out of those holes of what I call the Swiss cheese. But then there's also dragonflies. So the dragon flies, but then there's also dragonflies. So that little play on words, that little sense of what would happen if you kind of did a little different play on those words. And this is also, I think, one of my favorite pieces as well. Yeah, it was really fun to do. So this is another little play on words, is Swan Song. The doll is holding these little metal. I made the little musical notes that's dangling from her hand. My father loved ballet, and his favorite ballet was Swan Lake. I grew up in Denver, Colorado, and I remember my dad, I think I was in the 4th grade, and my dad took my sisters and I to see the Denver Ballet performance of Swan Lake. And I remember at the time, I didn't realize I was going to hear the tapping of the feet of the toe shoes. And you could hear that as they were dancing. And I remember thinking that surprised me. But my dad and my mom and dad were able to see Swan Lake in St. Petersburg, performed by the Bolshoi Ballet. My dad died in 2012. And I thought, another little homage to my parents. They always nurtured my art background. My dad would bring home paper from work so that I could turn it over and draw on it. Because like, oh, here's this extra paper, Chris, you might want to for your drawings. So little homage to my dad here, but also that little play on words where there's the swan, and also my love of bird's nests. I made the metal twisted up little bird's nest that the swan is sitting in. These tall cone-like hats that I've done. Several years ago, probably must have been about 4 years ago, I stumbled across an image on Pinterest of these Yoruba beaded ceremonial hats. And they're a tall cone-like hat, and they have birds along them. It turns out this is a very complicated kind of ceremonial type thing. Color is important, and this the bringing in the natural world into it. But I fell in love with it, and I ended up purchasing one a couple years ago when the bead shop in Carson City went out, and they had one, and it's gigantic. It's huge. I can't even imagine wearing it. It must be just, it is. It's just heavy as can be. But I started experimenting with kind of, you could tell story through this tall type of a column that through pattern, through whatever it is you're going to add to it. And I mean, I love hats. I've always loved hats. Maybe it was that Easter hat that my mom got me when I was a little kid from, we have pictures of my sisters with the little Easter hats, but I've always loved hats. And so I thought, well, this has potential. This is the yes, and then you have to do and. Okay, yes, and what else are you going to add to it?
Yeah, so, she's lovely. She's lovely. I love the story about her.
Yeah, she's fun too. So this is a little close up on another little language thing, a stitch in time. So there's little timepieces, little clocks that I made. There's little gears and things going through the skirt. And she's holding rolled up fabric, and it's like, okay, that's me again, go into a fabric store. It's like, oh, gotta buy these things and start thinking about how you're going to use them. So there's probably another shot of the hat later on, but it's that little autobiographical moment. I, as I said, I grew up in Denver, Colorado. We moved to Kansas when I was in high school, but I barely passed my 7th grade sewing class. I got a D- in my 7th grade sewing class. And the irony is definitely not lost on me that I make a living sewing when I barely passed a 7th grade sewing class. And I figure out how to do stuff. I didn't learn in a conventional manner. I didn't learn verbally. I learned visually. And it took my art background and the sense of experimentation that was going to go, okay, you're not learning that way. We got to learn it. We got to figure out a different way to do this. And so that's another little sort of little nod to that autobiographical thing of, take that, Miss Rogers.
Yes.
Well, that out all the time.
they're all lovely, Christina, and I just thank you. I appreciate you sharing all of these with us.
Thank you.
And I wanted to mention that you have a nice article coming up in the fall issue of A for Artistic, and you'll be sharing more of your story in there with images. So, please be watching for that. That's going to be coming out the first week in October. And to wrap up this presentation on the slides, we want to offer you a big congratulations for becoming a NIADA artist. I know it was a great moment for you and your family. I'm sure they were excited for you as well.
They were very excited.
Oh, sure. I'm sure they were. Well, I'm going to stop sharing the slide presentation because I know you wanted to do some show and tell as well. Yeah. So I will switch this off and bring us back on. And I will turn the screen over to you because it's better for you to show the pieces on a full screen. Okay. So I will drop down in the green room.
Okay. All righty. Thank you, Adele. Okay, this is one of the pieces that that I've done recently, and this is another one that's the idea of language. This is Foxtails, and PBS also does wonderful nature programs, and they had one on foxes not long ago, and they were talking about that. Of course, the mother fox is the vixen. That's what they call the mother fox is the vixen. And she will draw attention to herself in order to give the little kits a chance to hide. And so here's where the story could be is the kit hiding intentionally, or is she drawing attention away from something that the kit needs to stay away from? So lots of little bits of, here's her tail here. So you can see some of the cut work, the Swiss cheese, as I call it, in her skirt. And then here's her hat with the little kit on top. And this is very much like that Yoruba hat with the, there's a geometric element to it, and then you're adding the natural element to it. But that gives you a chance to elevate something and then also add part of what's happening in the cut work of this skirt. There's cut work across the back with the little parts in here. And there's also all of the little different parts of the things that are popping out, the three-dimensional things that are popping out. There's a lot of things that I do that has repetition. I read Walter Isaacson's book on Leonardo da Vinci, and he talks about that repetition and that harmony of repetition and how important that is. And so you'll see lots of circular kinds of things that get repeated and throughout this. So how this gets done is, like I said, I kind of start with Swiss cheese. This is a little jacket that ended up being on Cattails. Well, the first effort on Cattails was a different kind of tabard, and it wasn't quite working with the doll, with the way this cat was going through this. So I shifted to a different type of a little jacket. So what happens is, once this gets cut, you have to have something stiff on the back, particularly for the skirt to stand out and hold its shape. So I use some of the horsehair interfacing. Sometimes there's all different kinds of things you can use. I also like to add a little bit of texture. So I add the cheesecloth, what they call drapery scrim, that type of stuff. I will add that underneath once I cut those circles. And then I want things peeking through. So I will have other little circles that are popping through that give you other little shapes. And then, of course, here's our kitty going in and out of our cheesecloth, out of our Swiss cheese. So because this one wasn't working on here, I'm making some dolls for this last little event that I'm going to do. And as I'm going through my little stash of things, I'm going, oh, wait a minute. This could end up being just a darling little apron that will go across this little pincushion style doll. So all that effort didn't end up on the doll, but it's going to end up somewhere else, because I love the idea of looking at one thing but seeing something else. And that I think is going to end up awfully, awfully cute. Here is, of course, our little hat that didn't quite work. It was just way too overpowering, way too much for her head. It competed with what was going on in the skirt, but darn, it's cute. So at some point it will end up being something. I'm not sure what, or I might just keep it. But it really was fun to make, and it's just somewhere along the line, it's going to end up somewhere else. So here's another one of the little hats. And it's got a little white rabbit on it. And this is just a much more extemporaneous kind of a treatment where you're seeing lots of little experimentation with folds and that whole circular thing that goes on, but then this little bunny popping out saying, what's going on? What's happening? So here's one with dragonflies, because I love dragonflies. So here's also one. This also has that sense of, if you go to Pinterest and pull up Yoruba beaded hats, you're going to see this kind of cone-like hat with all this very geometric kinds of shaping through there. And here's that whole little three-dimensional thing kind of popping out of the top of the hat, which is awfully cute. So I also make little small things because I need immediate gratification sometimes. And so I will end up doing things that end up, there is transferable in the sense that it can work on some of the more complicated pieces. So sometimes it's helpful to kind of work out the little things on some of those smaller items. So so some of the little girls, some of the little people that I will do for some of my smaller events, they just end up being a fun, quick way of, and for me, I use it as a thinking process. As I'm working on one little piece, my brain is kind of going, oh, that could work for something else bigger. So I always put my thought process to work one way or another. So of course I had to do a swan after Swan Song with the beautiful shape of the neck and the wings. You know, anything with wings, certainly appeals to me. So so there's some of those small things that I'm working on that are probably see somewhere down the road, either on Facebook or I'll pin them on my Pinterest or my blog. But they'll get there at some point. So some are this Foxtails is she's not quite done. I've got a few little things to do with her when it comes to the base and how I really want to pose her a little bit more. But for the most part, she's pretty darn close, getting close to the kind of little refining little areas. So so that's what I have been working on. So
thank you.
How are we doing, Adele?
You're doing great. You're doing great. And I know they're really enjoying hearing your stories and your thought process, which is always nice. We sit in our studios and we're all thinkers, just, always thinking, how are we going to do this? And what are we going to do next? And yeah, it's nice to hear other artists that they doing the same process as well. Now, will you be, I know NIADA is going to be in Airmont next year. Right. Will you be attending Airmont next year?
Yes.
Okay. I wanted to mention that I'm not sure registration is open at this time, but it will be soon, I imagine. And if anybody's interested, just go to www.niada.org. And also Christina's page is up there too, so make sure you go by and check it out.
Well, I really encourage anybody who's looking for a conference, who's looking for an enclave of people who are going to support you and you're going to feel inspired by, come to the NIADA conference and don't be shy about bringing in a doll for critique. Bring it in and jump in and get another little set of eyes on this, and then take some time and follow up and just commit to saying, okay, how can I make this the best it can be? Right.
Well, it's a wonderful experience, and I know next year, well, they always offer classes, and that's also wonderful because you learn some of the techniques of the artist, and that goes a long way as well.
Well, I took Shirley Thornton's class in Portland, and I started out with these embroidered faces. They were pretty simple, but by sitting in her class and really kind of rediscovering, oh my God, I love all of that. How can I now propel that into something that's identifiable for me? But she reignited that little. I mean, I've been doing dolls for all these years, and I started out one way, shifted off to another way. But one of the things that I also looked at when I was pursuing this was, no matter how many times you approach something, try it again a new way.
Right.
Try to freshen it up. And Shelley really kind of was that little, let's take another look at that. And I'm really grateful to her for that. So
we have Katie from France, it looks like.
Okay. How does this work, Adele?
Can you see the comment on the screen?
No.
Not seeing the comments.
Nope.
Well, she's from France, waving.
You want to read it?
Nothing. It's just saying that she's from France and she's coming in. Okay. I don't know if you can see this one. Can you see this one?
Oh, I see Leslie.
Yep.
Miss Leslie. Hey. Yep. Love work. Yeah. Well, I thought about you, Leslie, recently. There's my book club read a book called The Overstory. And there's an Ovid quote that I think is perfect for you. And it's, let us sing us a song of how people become other things. And I thought, oh, that is just so, is that it? I'll have to pull it up. But I thought, oh, that's Leslie. Let us sing us a song of how people become other things. And, words propel me constantly, and poetry, different poets. And the other thing that I'm going to recommend to all your viewers.
Okay.
One of my favorite things ever. I saw this little film when I was a senior in high school. We used it later on in education classes. I saw it in college. I've seen it probably 100 times. And then I had to try to find a way to find it again. And I found it on YouTube. And it's an Oscar-winning short film called Why Man Creates. And it goes through the creative process, starting to how you refine this, how you have the discipline to, but it's fun. And it's just as cute as it can be. It's, like I said, it's an Oscar-winning short. So if you go to YouTube and pull up Why Man Creates, Oscar-winning short, it's 28 minutes. And it's definitely you'll see it's 1968. I mean, it has that vintage look to it. But there's a last part of this little short film that was one of my favorite things, and I think it really summarizes a lot of doll making. And one of the things it says is, man has struggled against time, against decay, against destruction, against death. Some have cried out in torment and agony. Some have fought against arrogance and fierce pride. Some have challenged the gods, matching power with power. Some have celebrated life. Some have burned with faith. Some have spoken in voices we no longer understand. Some have spoken eloquently. Some has spoken inarticulately. Some haltingly. Some almost mute. Yet, among all the variety of human expression, there is a thread of connection, a common mark, the urge to look into oneself and out the world and say, this is who I am. I'm unique. I am here. I am. And I think doll making is very much like that. This is who I am.
It is.
This is my take on things. Is unique to what happens in my head, and this is what it is.
Well, that was lovely, Christine, and the presentation was fabulous. And thank you so much for taking the time to be here. And
Thank you, Adele.
I know everybody's going to enjoy the replay. There's some that weren't able to make it, but for those that were able to make it, thank you so much. It helps us to keep going. It encourages me to keep bringing artists in here. So thank you. Thank you very much.
Adele.
You're welcome.
You're just always such a supporter, and I truly appreciate you bringing me into the 21st century.
Well, you know, things happen. I always worried about technical difficulties because it does happen. But, you know, I just go with the flow. I figured, well, everybody has to experience that at some point in their lives, but we did okay. We did fine.
Everybody's thing is like, okay, now what do we do to fix it?
Yes. Well, thanks a million, and we'll be talking to you soon. Thank you, everybody. Bye-bye.
Have a good day. Bye-bye.